At 3 in the morning, when the pillow is warm on both sides and the room has that stale, closed air hush, you feel yourself start to go under. Your jaw is tight. Your chest has that small, hard flutter. Nothing outside has moved, and still, something in you has begun to sink. That feeling matters more than most people think. Because when you hear Jesus walking on water, you were probably taught to picture distance, moonlight on waves, a boat pushed around by weather, men staring into the dark. And yes, that scene is there. I'm not trying to take it away from you. But I am asking a quieter question. Why does this story press so hard on fear? Why does it linger on what a man sees, what he feels, and the instant his courage breaks? That's where the mystery starts for me. In Matthew 14, Peter actually gets out there. For a moment, he stands. That detail should bother you a little. If the whole point were only that one impossible person did one impossible thing, why let Peter do it too, even briefly? Then the line turns sharp. He saw the wind, was afraid, and beginning to sink, he cried out. The order matters. He notices, he fears, then he goes down. You've lived that order. A thought hits you. One look at the future, one memory, one stray image, and suddenly your whole inner footing changes. So maybe the question in this story isn't only, what happened on that sea? Maybe it's also, what happens in you when fear enters first? And if that's true, then the water in the story may be closer than anyone told you. Closer than the shoreline. Closer than the boat. Closer than your own next breath. Because there is a real fluid around the organ doing all this fearing. And once you see that, Peter's sinking starts to sound very different. If this kind of deep reading speaks to you, leave a like and stay with me for the next step. So stay with that for a second. The story itself gives you the order. Peter does not sink and then get scared. He gets scared and then the sinking begins. That tiny sequence changes everything. Because if fear comes first, then the deepest action in the scene is happening before anybody goes under. It happens in attention, in perception, in that quick inner turn where a person stops standing in trust and starts leaning into what might destroy him. You know that turn. You feel it when your throat goes dry after one sentence. When your stomach drops before anything has actually happened. When the mind sees the wind and starts writing the ending by itself. And that is why this account keeps pulling me back. Jesus walking on water may be one of the most famous images in Scripture, but the verse is strangely careful with the human part of it. It does not say Peter judged the depth. It does not say he tested the temperature. It says he saw the wind, which is odd if you think about it. You don't really see wind. You see what it does. You see the surface disturbed. You see movement, threat, instability. Now, I want to be careful here, because this is where people start forcing symbols and pretending every line has only one meaning. I'm not doing that. I'm saying the story itself invites a second layer. It puts fear in the driver's seat. It treats inner disturbance as the turning point. And if that's true, then the question becomes very plain. Where in your own body do thought and fear sit close enough to water for this image to stop sounding poetic and start sounding physical? There is an answer to that, a real one. You could hold a model of it in your hands. Inside your skull, around the brain, and down the spinal cord, there is a clear liquid called cerebrospinal fluid. Cold name, simple thing. And your mind has been resting in it every day of your life without you ever being told how strange that is. because once you hear what that fluid is doing, the whole picture shifts again. And the strange part is, that fluid is not some tiny damp layer or a poetic idea you're meant to admire from a distance. It is part of the real physical setting of your mind. Your brain, out in open air, weighs about 3 pounds. In your head, resting in cerebrospinal fluid, it does not press down with all of that weight. Buoyancy carries almost all of it. The effective load drops to something like 50 grams, around the weight of a few small coins in your hand. Just pause on that. The organ that holds memory, fear, language, prayer, imagination, all of it is being held up every second of your life. That matters for the story, because a thing floats when it belongs in the medium around it, when its density is close to the density of what surrounds it. It can rest there, suspended, almost effortless. Your brain is nearly the same density as that clear fluid around it. That's why it does not slump under its full burden. It hangs there, cradled, balanced, carried. When you hear Jesus walking on water, maybe that old image starts to pick up a different texture. Maybe this is not only about force. Maybe it has something to do with right relation, with staying in a kind of balance inside a living, moving sea. Now, I want to be fair. I'm not saying Matthew was teaching anatomy and secret code. That would be too neat and, honestly, too easy. I'm saying scripture sometimes lands on images the body has been quietly acting out all along. The puzzle gets interesting when the lines begin to rhyme. Fear enters, balance changes, and the one who was steady starts to go down. You know that sensation in your own body before you have words for it? Heaviness, tightness, a sudden loss of ease. So here is the next question, and it's the one that pulls this deeper than a clever metaphor. If the body already contains a hidden water, and if fear in the story changes whether a man stays up or goes under, then why is the place named Galilee at all? Why give the sea a name unless the name itself is trying to whisper something? That name is worth slowing down for. Galilee comes from the Hebrew root Galil, and the honest meaning there is something like a circle, a circuit, something that rolls or turns. I need to put a handrail on this before we go any farther. I am not saying the name secretly means brain fluid. It doesn't. And when people get careless with word roots, they can make a text say anything they want. So let's stay clean with it. What the name gives you is a texture. Rolling, turning, circling movement. Now bring that back to the scene. The whole scene takes place on a body of water whose very name carries the feel of motion in loops and rounds. And inside your own head, the fluid around the brain is not a dead puddle. It moves, it circulates, it passes through chambers, it travels down and around. You don't need to force the match to notice the echo. A named sea outside, a moving sea inside, one in scripture, one in the body, both tied to motion. That's where the puzzle starts feeling less random. Because if the story wanted only drama, any sea would do. But the Bible is often fussy in small ways. Names matter. Sequences matter. Tiny word choices matter. Peter sees the wind, fear rises, and his body follows. The water has a name that leans toward turning. And your own hidden water has that same quality of circulation. You see why somebody drawn to symbols would stop right there and stare at the page for a long time. There's another layer too. In a storm, what terrifies you is not always the depth. Sometimes it's the motion, the rocking, the loss of stable footing, the repeated roll that keeps your body from finding where level is. If Galil carries even a shade of that turning quality, then the setting of this story is even more precise than it first appears. And once you notice that, a harder question rises. If the name hints at rolling water, and the body contains rolling water. What does it mean that one figure stands easy on it while another starts to fold? That difference between the two men is where the whole scene starts breathing. They are on the same water, same night, same motion underfoot. One remains steady, and one begins to fold the moment fear gets inside his seeing. If you read slowly, the story almost refuses to let weather be the deepest issue. Weather is there, sure, but the turning point sits inside the person standing in it. And that is not a lonely pattern in Scripture. Think of how often water shows up when things are unformed, unstable, or overwhelming. At the opening of Genesis, before shape comes, there are waters. In the Psalms, the deep can become a place of trouble, noise, shaking. Then a word comes, and order returns. I'm not piling these verses up to play a trick on you. I'm saying the Bible has a habit. Again and again, it uses water for more than geography. It uses it for conditions of being, especially the kind that feel too large to hold. Now bring that habit back to this scene. It sits right inside that old pattern, a human figure in relation to the deep. A question of whether chaos rules the moment or whether something steadier can move through it untouched. That should make you look at Peter with softer eyes. He is not the fool in the story. He is the exposed one. He is the one who shows you exactly how fast a person can lose center. You know that feeling. Your hands are still. The house is quiet. The refrigerator hums in the dark kitchen. A clock keeps knocking out the seconds. And yet inside, the whole surface has gone rough. That is why this reading lands so close to the skin. It gives a name to a moment you already know. But there is still one piece we have not faced head on. If Scripture keeps using water this way, and if the body gives you a real hidden sea, then what does the one who stays standing actually represent? What quality in him keeps the surface from taking him? Because the answer is not far away at all. It is hidden in the kind of attention he carries. That quality is easy to miss because the scene is so famous. You hear the splash of the waves in your mind, you picture the darkness, and your attention runs to the shock of it. But if you stay with the text, what stands out is the steadiness of the one moving across the surface. He is not frantic. He is not scattered. He is not argued out of his footing by the conditions around him. In a story built on motion, his attention feels still. That is the clue. If Peter shows you what happens when fear hijacks perception, then the other figure shows you another way of being inside the same conditions. A kind of undivided awareness, calm above the storm. I don't mean that as a pretty phrase. I mean it as the working difference between these two men. One is ruled by what rises around him. The other carries a center that the movement cannot borrow. And once you say that out loud, it starts sounding less like a distant spectacle and more like a pattern you recognize from your own worst moments. Haven't you felt both versions in yourself? The night when one thought gets in and every sound in the house grows sharp. The vent hum, the faucet tick, the soft creak in the floorboards. And then those rarer moments when the same life is still there, same bills, same uncertainty, same unanswered thing, yet something in you stays level. That difference is not imaginary. Your body knows it. Fear narrows attention. It picks one threat and keeps feeding it until the whole field of awareness bends around it. The scene in Matthew catches that bend in one line. He saw the wind, he was afraid, then the drop began. So what would the opposite look like in real life? Not perfection, not some icy denial, just a mind that does not hand its balance over to every passing wave. a person who can feel movement without becoming movement. And now, the story gets more personal than most people ever let it become. Because if that steadiness can be named, then maybe it can also be practiced. And that is where the scene stops being far away. Once you let the body and the text sit beside each other, the picture becomes unnervingly close. The water is no longer only something under a boat in the dark. It starts to resemble the inner sea your own mind lives over every day. The brain rests in fluid. Thought rises there. Fear rises there too. And when fear takes over, you do not need an ocean to know what sinking feels like. It hits in a chair, in a parked car, at the kitchen counter with one hand on the cold stone and your pulse climbing for no good reason. So the old image starts arranging itself in a new way. The water becomes the field your mind is moving over. The storm becomes agitated thought. Peter becomes the moment you lose your footing inside it. And the one still standing in the same scene becomes something precious. The possibility that awareness can remain stable while everything around it moves. I'm giving you the map plainly now, because at a certain point, it helps to stop circling it. Still, I want to keep one foot on the ground here. This is interpretation. It's a serious one, I think, because it lines up with the verse order, with the physical reality of the brain in cerebrospinal fluid, and with the strange turning quality tied to Galilee. But it is still interpretation. You should test it against your own experience, not swallow it because it sounds beautiful. And your own experience is where this becomes hard to ignore. You have already had days when your thoughts kept moving but did not own you. You answered the call. You handled the news. You felt the rush of fear try to take the wheel, and something steadier stayed present. Then there are the other days. One sentence, one memory, one possibility, and the whole inside of you tilts. Same life, same body, same hidden water. Different stance. Which means the real question is no longer whether the image is clever. The real question is this. What is the exact move Peter forgets? The one you can make before the next wave gets your name. It is smaller than you think. Peter's missed move is not some heroic secret hidden on a mountain. It happens in a split second, right where attention meets fear. He gives the motion around him permission to become the meaning inside him. That is such a human thing to do. You hear one tone in somebody's voice. You read one line in a message. You feel one sensation in your chest. And suddenly, the whole world inside starts taking shape around that one thing. That is seeing the wind. You are not seeing reality cleanly anymore. You are seeing disturbance and then handing yourself over to it. The body joins in fast. Breath goes shallow. Jaw tightens. Vision narrows. The hidden water in your own head has not changed its nature, but your way of inhabiting it has. The old image of him on the water becomes almost unbearably intimate here. The scene is no longer out there. It is in that moment when you either stay with what is steady or you step into the storm's version of events. And this is where people often make the mistake of thinking the answer is to crush every thought flat. But that is not what the story suggests. The sea still moves. The wind still exists. The question is whether you fuse with it, whether every wave gets your full name and your full attention. The one who remains upright does not seem to waste himself arguing with the water. He stays in relation to something deeper than the motion. That matters because it means the skill is gentle. It is less like winning a fight and more like refusing to lean your whole weight into panic. You feel the surge, yes. You notice the wave, yes. But you do not climb inside it and let it think for you. In a strange way, that matches the body too. Buoyancy works because the relation holds. When that relation is right, what should feel crushing becomes bearable. So now we are very close to the part that can actually help you. If the missed move happens in attention, then the recovered move must happen there too. And it can be practiced in a room that is perfectly still. So, this is where the story turns from interpretation into something in your own body. Tonight, or whenever the next wave hits, don't start by trying to become fearless. That usually makes things louder. Start smaller. Sit down somewhere plain, edge of the bed, chair by the window, car seat after the engine is off and the metal has gone quiet. Let your hands rest with their weight. Let your mouth unclench. Then notice what is already moving in you. A thought comes, another one right behind it, a memory with a sting on it, a prediction dressed like a fact. You do not have to chase any of them. This is the part Peter loses for a moment. He lets the disturbance tell him what kind of world he is standing in. You can practice a different move. See the thought. Name it softly if you need to. Fear, planning, catastrophe. Then come back to something simple and steady. The breath entering cool at the nose, leaving a little warmer. The pressure of your feet. The touch of fabric against your wrist. That return is not nothing. That is the step. You are teaching attention not to hand itself away so quickly. You are reminding the mind that movement is not command. The old image of Jesus on the water becomes very practical here. The surface may still shift. The body may still feel the first rush. But you do not have to become every gust that passes through. You can let the thought crest and fall without kneeling to it. And if you want the bodily side of this, it fits there too. When you stop feeding the alarm, the system often loosens by degrees. Breath deepens. The chest gives a little. The pressure behind the eyes softens. The same hidden water is there, the same brain resting in it, but the whole experience changes when attention stops amplifying threat. Try that for a minute, maybe two. Because the final piece of this story is not merely how to steady yourself when fear rises. It is why the one on the water speaks before the storm in you has fully finished forming. Because in that scene, the saving thing is not delay. It is interruption. Before panic can finish building its whole house, a voice enters. Before the wave inside Peter becomes a complete world, he hears something other than the wind. That matters more than people notice. The story does not leave him alone with his spiraling long enough for it to become truth. A hand, a word, a presence reaches him while the fear is still hot. You know what that feels like, even if you have never named it. A single steady sentence arriving in the middle of a bad hour. The breath you finally hear after 10 shallow ones. The way a room changes when you stop arguing with every thought and let one clear thing be stronger than all the noise. In that sense, Jesus walking on water is not only an image of mastery. It is an image of intervention, of something sane meeting you before the whole inside collapses. And maybe that is why this story has endured the way it has. It is not locked in the past. It keeps happening. The mind stands, then wavers. Fear enters through attention. The surface turns rough. Then, sometimes, almost quietly, another center appears. You do not always conquer the storm. Sometimes you simply hear a truer sound than the one that was drowning you. That is enough to change where you place your weight. A lamp beside the bed throws a small gold circle on the wall. The air conditioner clicks off. The house settles into that thin, wooden silence that only shows up near dawn. And there you are, still in the same life, still in the same body, but no longer falling as fast. Maybe that is the image to keep. Not a man proving himself to the sea, and not a frightened disciple disappearing into it. Just the moment a shaken body remembers it can be held, the way a bowl of water stills first at the center, while the rim keeps trembling a little longer.